James from Bolt Bros here. Want to talk about our new GM for the Chargers, Joe Ortiz, and just kind of talk a little bit about the last, you know, 10 years of draft history, not as a GM, but also as just a assistant as to the GM to a scout, all that. Kind of compare a little bit of Tom Telesco from 2013 to 2023 in draft histories, more or less here. So let's just talk a little bit about it, guys. Let's get into it. Bolt Bros, let's go.
I'm Dale Henley. You watching the Bolt Bros podcast? Let's do it!
All right, guys. Appreciate all the love and support, guys. Once again, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're not. We'll constantly give you guys updates and subjects to talk about Chargers football. And man, it's exciting times all around right now, guys. Got some exciting moves going on with the coaching staff. We got our new GM, got our DC, got our head coach, everything. It's very, very exciting. So this offseason is going to be great. So keep locked into the Bolt Bros here, guys. So let's talk about the man of the hour here. Joe Ortiz, big thing about him, he's been in the NFL for a long time, been with the Ravens for a very long time, since 98. He was personal assistant from 98 to 2000, pro scout 2001 to 2002, area scout 2003 to 2005, 2006 to 2008 as a national scout, director of college scouting 2009 to 2018, so very long time as a scout, and then a director of player personnel 2019 to 2023, and then now he is the general manager of the Los Angeles Chargers. So very cool to be able to see a guy that's been in the NFL for so long and has had several times being interviewed for general manager positions and was even considered a finalist for the New York Giants in 2022. He's worked under Ozzie Newsome. He's also worked under Eric DaCosta, obviously, too. He is a guy that has been very, very highly touted as a GM candidate for a very long time. So excited to be able to have him for the Chargers. Think he's going to do great for us all around for finding those right players. I mean, obviously he wasn't a GM at the time when he was with the Ravens, but he's involved with the scouting. Being a GM is being a scout to find the right guys that fit your team, guys that are just system-based fits, maybe a specific type of role or a certain type of, player with a toughness to him. You got to think of what Jim Harbaugh wants. Tough, rugged players willing to put their body on the line, put in the work, and get better and get stronger, faster, more physical. You think that's what Joe Ortiz is going to go for, and that's what Jim Harbaugh wants. So it's going to be exciting to see. A lot of people are kind of comparing us as, hey, maybe we're the Ravens of the West. Let's see. Let's see how it goes. The big thing I just want to emphasize on this, too, is I'm going to look over 2013 draft to 2023 draft, which obviously he was involved at some level with them. He didn't basically get involved with more player personnel till 2019, but he was a director of college scouting during that timeline. You could even go back to 2009, but I'm just going to kind of compare it to Tom Telesco's time. When Tom Telesco was, and I don't want to talk about too much on the past, but when Tom Telesco was the GM for the Chargers, he only drafted 2 Pro Bowl players outside of the first round. So obviously you think all the first round players that he did, he hit pretty often on that side to get a really quality player. Keenan Allen, Joey Bosa, Justin Herbert, just to name one. I mean, we've got a couple guys that are been in the first round that has done very well for us and become Pro Bowl players. But just outside of that round one, it's been real hard to find quality players. One thing I observed a lot with the draft with the Ravens over the last 10 years, they've done a lot better all around. I think Tom Telesco is roughly about one of the 4th worst GMs in draft history as a GM. We hope to get a lot better, and I'll give you some notes here to kind of look at to maybe give us a little bit of encouragement of what's going to happen here with the draft. So let's jump into that. Let's go right into the 2013 draft here. So 2013 draft, they had a boatload of picks here. One thing I'm just going to point out here too is that Baltimore Ravens had 3 Pro Bowlers out of this, and they weren't first round guys. Now, it's very, very difficult to be able to hit on every single pick. It's very, very difficult. Matt Elam didn't really work out as well. Arthur Brown didn't work out well, but guess what? In the third round, Brandon Williams was a Pro Bowler. Kyle Juszczyk, you remember him? I have the worst time trying to say his last name, but they call him Juice, basically. We know he's a Pro Bowl fullback, one of the best in the league right now, and is playing for the Niners at this time. Ryan Jensen, great offensive center, was a Pro Bowler. Right then and there, in the 2013 draft, they've had more Pro Bowl players after the first round than Tom Telesco had throughout his whole entire career as a GM. Bingo. That's a great, great thing to be able to see right from the get-go, guys. And I'm excited to be able to see that. I mean, once again, there's going to be a lot of players on this list too that, they've had a good amount of career in the league. Some of these guys, John Simon, 100 games in the NFL. Ricky Wagner, 118. Ryan Jensen, obviously he did well. 100 games. There's guys that actually worked out well. And that's what you want to find. Find guys that could actually be in the league and stay in the league for a good amount of time. And it's exciting to be able to see that. So right from the get-go, it looks positive for us. It looks very positive for us. So let's go into 2014 for you guys. Now, as these continue to keep coming, you're going to kind of start noticing a little bit more, how they draft, what kind of positions they like to draft. If you look at basically this draft for 2014, you start thinking, okay, last year they did a lot with defensive tackles, offensive tackles, defensive ends, wide receivers. They kind of will keep trying to hit. 2014, hey, they hit on a Pro Bowl linebacker, CJ Mosley. Did extremely well for him. Pro Bowl guy, first round pick. Outside of that, there was a lot of guys that actually did well. I wouldn't say that they were phenomenal base guys. Terrence Brooks, 105 games. Timmy Jernigan, excuse me, let me say that right. 76 games in the league, 109, but then there was a lot of drop off there. You can't hit every single draft, and not every draft's going to have just perfect players all around. But at the same side, one thing I want to observe a lot is that they do a lot of tight end drafting. They do a lot of defensive tackle drafting. They do a lot of running back. Wide receiver is one that's going to be kind of a struggle all the time that I've seen with the Ravens as a constant. But guess what? They got out of one Pro Bowl player out of here, CJ Mosley. And they still are just trying to build those lines and make sure they have a tough tight end situation too. So keep an eye on that, guys. So let's move on to the next year, 2015 here, guys. Let me pull that up here for you guys. But I think it's very encouraging watching some of these drafts. I mean, obviously, once again, Joe is not directly involved with the drafts, but he's involved with looking after the players, finding those right players, and those guys that actually could be system fits for him too. So if you go into the 2015 draft, Brashard Perryman, he was a first round pick, didn't hit. It's always tough to be able to get a really, really good wide receiver late in the draft. That's one thing that I'm going to say that's a little bit of a knock on the Ravens. It took them a while to figure it out. And wide receiver obviously could be one of those picks that we need coming up here. So we'll see where that kind of pans out. So, Perriman obviously had 80 games, 2022 was the last year that he played. He did have a fair amount of catches and yards in his career, but it just never really panned out. Max Williams, I like the player. He was in the league till 2022. Did have a fair amount of catches, not a bad player all around. But, I will say this, they did still find a way to be able to get a couple guys there. Carl Davis was one of the players there. He had a fair career, at least in 75 games. I wouldn't say it was anything great as an impact kind of career, but it did well as a player. Did also have, more defensive end, more tight end guys, more defensive tackles, more running backs, two tight ends drafted in this draft. And, look at this guy, Darren Waller. You remember who that guy is, who's in the league, one of the top tight ends in the league. Late round pick, last pick for them. We know Darren Waller is actually a very, very good player too. So, and Zadarius Smith, great defensive end. I think he was a solid guy all around. And they basically ended up, he had a pretty long dang career all around, and he played well this year too with Cleveland. So I think it's kind of an interesting thing to be able to see that they do a good job of finding those good players, even in the late rounds And you realize how often that was an issue for the Chargers. We always kind of do these things where it's like, well, we'll find a guy for potential down the road. He could have some sort of potential. He could grow into something. No, I think they want to find guys that could make impacts now. And that's huge for this team. There's always so many times we try those guys that say, oh, he'll be good down the road. No, you got to find a guy now, bottom line. So with this draft, there was 2 Pro Bowl players, which was Zadarius Smith and Darren Waller. So cool. Very good to see. And not first round picks that became Pro Bowlers. So awesome to see that. So moving on, let's go into 2016 here. Let me pull that one up here for you guys. I do love that they are doing a lot of even double drafting for tight end positions, and also just trying to find a way to be able to build the lines. And that's key for your success, guys. That's key for everybody's success all around. So here you go. Here we go. We got the 2016 draft here. So with the 2016 draft, Ronnie Stanley hit pick 6. You don't like to pick high like that, but you got to hit on that pick, right? And they sure did. Ronnie Stanley, Pro Bowl player for that year. Also, later on in that draft, Kenneth Dixon, actually, I remember him being a pretty good running back, kind of a bigger guy all around. But one thing they did a lot of linebackers. They did defensive ends, cornerbacks, wide receiver, tackles, defensive tackles. They always seem to want to be able to add more depth to the to the O-line and the D-line, and then always add some sort of running backs. I mean, they did multiple running backs in this draft, multiple defensive ends. They really, really did well on that. And with this one, they hit late in round 5 with Matthew Judon. I love Judon as a player. And they were able to hit a Pro Bowl player once again. Very, very constant that they're finding a way to be able to get more Pro Bowl players later in the draft. You got to love to see that, guys. You have got to love to see that, because how many times do we talk about with Tom Telesco? We don't have the depth. We're not finding ways to be able to get guys to fill in, the back end of the roster, or basically maybe push your guys who are one position in a cornerback or whatever it might be. It's about finding guys that are going to be competitors, tough, rugged base football players to toughen up this team, create a great competition, versus like have your guys. It's like, once again, Brandon Staley was big about his guys. They're going to play regardless. You know what? You should have probably tried some of those younger guys in the back end to really push them a little bit more. So all around, great to be able to see that. Good draft all around. You could get a couple Pro Bowl players every single draft. Lovely. That's what you want to see, guys. That's what you want to see. And that helps out with the salary cap later on when they basically are later base round draft picks. That's great. You could work the draft very well for your benefit to be able to get more talent and help the salary cap down the road. So, all right, moving on. Let's go to 2016, guys. Now, it's 2017. Sorry. Great stuff all around here, guys. And I love being able to look at the past for the Ravens. I'm excited to be able to see what the Ravens can do for us, or at least the Raven philosophy can be for us this upcoming season. So, all right, let's get in there. We are in 2017. So here we go, guys. Sorry, pulling it up here for you again. Now, let's see what the 2017 draft brings to this team. A team that was 9-7, second in AFC North. We got, a much smaller type draft here. Not as many draft picks as they've had in the past. It's you can't have like these huge drafts where you got 8, 9, 10 picks kind of thing. But they did hit on the round 1 with Marlon Humphrey, who was a cornerback for them. A lot of the other players, they were at good kind of, role player type guys for them. Still defensive end, linebacker, guard. Love to see that. You want to be able to still build out that guard and those lines. You want to be able to make sure you have depth there. I feel like they do a very good job with that all around. And I'm excited to be able to see that and see that idea with this. So, Marlon Humphrey was the hit here, but once again, another draft. You're getting a Pro Bowl based player. That's what you want to see, guys. Constantly adding Pro Bowl based players here on this team and making sure you get that first round pick correct. So far, it's only been one draft where they haven't been able to hit on a first round pick. So, moving on, let's move over to the 2018 draft here. And let's get on there. Pull that up here for you guys. Apologize. All right. So with the 2018 draft, let's see what they got going on here. A lot to be able to be said about this one. They were 10-6 this season. They were first place. They had a good year. First place. Take that all day, guys. So this one, they had a fair amount of draft picks once again. One thing I love about this one is that this is the year they went double tight end with Hayden Hurst and Mark Andrews. Look at how beefy that first 4 picks were and what they were able to do. A lovely, guys. Hayden Hurst, solid tight end. You got Lamar Jackson. You got a change at quarterback at that point. Orlando Brown, offensive tackle. You got Mark Andrews. Great draft there, guys. Absolutely stellar based draft. I mean, you couldn't get any better than that. I mean, just to be able to get guys that are going to be just absolute rocks for your team. You got a franchise quarterback. You got a solid tackle. You ended up getting Mark Andrews, a tight end. You went double tight end there too. Makes me think a lot about what's going to happen with this next draft. I mean, you start hearing about some of the rumblings going after Bowers for our pick. It could be very, very possible, guys. So once again, there's some pretty good picks all around. It's going to be guys that did have some fair careers all around in the league, but all around, like Bradley Bozeman, he's 96 games, still looks like he's in the league, played through 2023. These are late round guys still being involved in the league. You got to love that, guys. You got to love that. So moving on, let's go to the 2019 draft, I believe. Let's see what we got going on here. Let me pull that back up here for you guys. Now, it's crazy to me, once again, comparing, and I don't want to compare too much to the past, but look, you're getting more out of your back-end draft players with their philosophy of drafting. So now with 2019, I think it's an interesting one too. They did not find any Pro Bowl players in this one. Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown, was their first round pick. Oklahoma, Jalen Ferguson. There was some pretty good Justice Hill, who's still on the team. You got some good picks there too. But it just kind of hasn't hit well. Now, one thing I want to say about Marquise Brown, they drafted him first round, right? But they also traded him off too. I do feel that there's a point that with Joe Hortiz, hey, look, and also I should say Jim Harbaugh, it's a short leash for these guys. If it's not working out, they're gone. And they will make sure that they do their best on making sure that they get the right people, right philosophy type players on your team. I mean, basically, Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown basically got traded off for a first round pick. That's big. Like, that would be awesome to be able to do that with, say, I mean, I'm not saying that's going to be the case, but what if it's going to be, Quentin Johnston or something like that? Basically, after that same draft, they ended up getting Kyle Hamilton. They basically traded off Marquise Brown and a third round pick to Arizona Cardinals for the 23rd pick. So they were able to add more of that, and they ended up getting Tyler Linderbaum through that draft too. And they also, traded back even further to even get more picks too. So pretty cool. I mean, they basically looked a way to be very aggressive, trade off players, not feel like you have your players that are drafted, which Tom Telesco loved to keep his dudes that he drafted, and protect them. Nope, nobody's protected in this situation. You could trade somebody off to be able to get more players, get more picks, and also get an impact-based player for them. So I love to be able to see that too. So once again, Marquise Brown was a big win in this draft, and actually was a future win for this team too. So moving on, guys, let's go to the next draft here. This would be the 2020 draft. Once again, a very, very good draft. I love to be able to see the successes that they've created with this team. And we also know Baltimore's always a very, very strong team all around. So year after year, they're going to compete. So here we go. Let's go into 2020. And this one is an interesting one, because I know for me, one of the guys I really wanted was Patrick Queen. I mean, that guy's a stud. J.K. Dobbins, good running back. They did a good job of picking him. He's just been having issues with just staying healthy. You had 3 Pro Bowlers out of this draft. Patrick Queen, Justin Madbuki, I can never say that guy's name, and Devin Duvernay. You ended up that it's crazy to think about that, even with a wide receiver. They've had a hard time trying to get the strong positions, or at least the wide receiver position situated, but he had a Pro Bowl based year that year, which was pretty awesome to be able to see that they found a guy that could actually hit for them on the wide receiver position. So that's the one thing I'm going to say about all these drafts, that I do feel like they have a hard time of making sure that they could get a solid, wide receiver situation. Now, he did get into 2 Pro Bowls, by the way, 2021 and 2022. So you got to love that. But they've had a lot of issues of trying to get wide receivers that end up not working out. So good to see. Good to see. Now, I'm just going to emphasize a little bit more on these draft picks. Once again, we're seeing later round guys after the first round finding ways to be an impact-based player and get to the Pro Bowl. How we have missed that so much with this dang team, and it is frustrating to not have that at all to help out the depth of this team. So big to see that, guys. Moving on. Let's go into the 2021 draft here. And the 2021 draft, a little tough to kind of look at this one, to be honest, in my opinion. Now, you're not going to hit on every single draft, in my opinion, but you're going to find some players that could be impact guys. Now, I'm going to emphasize a little bit on that wide receiver situation. Wide receivers seem to be a tough thing for a lot with the Ravens to be able to find the right guys. And this was a year that they didn't hit on their first round pick with Rashad Bateman. Rashad Bateman needs to be one of those guys that should have been an impact player. Just kind of didn't really pan out for him. 2023, still out there as a player. 93 catches currently in his career, 1,167 yards, 4 touchdowns. But a lot of these guys, Ben Cleveland, they're still out on there in the team, but they did cut some of their players kind of in their late draft and not go anywhere with them. But bottom line, Ben Cleveland was a good player all around too, but they didn't have a lot of guys that hit essentially as the Pro Bowl level of things. Not saying they're not impact-based players, but they're still good players out there that they ended up getting. And now it's still kind of early on a little bit in the sense it's 2021. Obviously, it's a couple of years ago, but at the same side, they did not hit a Pro Bowl player in this draft. And so, you can't win them all, right? You can't win them all. But let's move on to 2022 as we're getting closer here. And this is also when you're getting a lot more Joe Hortiz involvement with the draft, in a sense, more with, being obviously a player personnel and such too, handling a little bit more of that level from 2019 to 2023 currently. So he is more involved at this point, and he is working a lot closer with the GM. So as the 2022 draft, let's look and see what we got going on here. Once again, second in the AFC North, record 10-7. Did have a good season. And that's one thing about the Ravens. They're always going to bring it every single year. Now, this is the draft where they did the trade for Hollywood Brown. And guess what they got right out of the gate with that? They got Kyle Hamilton. They picked him. And then they ended up picking Tyler Linderbaum with that pick that they ended up trading with the Cardinals, and then also traded back to get more picks. So they ended up getting 2 Pro Bowl players right from the get-go. Lovely. A center and a safety. If you watch that last game with the Ravens, Kyle Hamilton is all over the field, and I love the way that he plays. I kind of wish that the Chargers were going to draft him earlier on in that same draft, but they ended up not doing that. Now, you do have a bunch of different players here, which is still kind of early on in their career. A lot of these guys still are on the team. Looks like the last one is Tyler Batty, who is not on the team or not in the league and did not pan out. But a lot of these guys are still sticking with the team. So you got to love to be able to see that. I mean, Pro Bowl players is what you want to draft, right? You want to get those guys and get those guys to be able to elevate your team and elevate the overall, point of your entire team. You want to be able to add more depth to your team. And also adding within that same 2022 draft, they had Isaiah Likely, who, if you've been paying attention to the Ravens, has done quite a bit for their team, by the way. Daniel Falali, I remember him as a offensive tackle, big guy, and they got him in round 4. So they did a good job of adding more to the line, adding more tight ends, adding more running backs, just adding a lot of pieces throughout this team. It's about pushing people, right? You got to push people to get them better and elevate their game all around. So final draft here, 2023, is here we go. Now this one always is going to sting, right? I think we all know what the 2023 draft was for the Chargers and what it should have been, but it wasn't. But here we go. They didn't have a ton of draft picks this year, but Zay Flowers, you know what? Look, I'm going to say the thing about Zay Flowers. They drafted him. He was their number one wide receiver this year. And guess what? We basically kind of had a lot of number one guys. You know, obviously we have Joshua Palmer, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, but we drafted Quentin Johnston, who just essentially wasn't really ready to be able to be in the limelight. And maybe they also emphasize that, hey, maybe we don't need you right now. Just kind of be in the back burner and we'll just kind of figure out the game kind of thing. Probably the wrong idea, guys. I mean, you want to draft to be able to get guys to contribute now. And I feel like that's what the Ravens tend to do. I expect that with Joe Hortiz, that we're going to draft guys for the now. And I think that's really what it bottom line boils down to. They didn't have a ton of picks this year, 6 picks, but they hit on their number one. Zay Flowers is going to be a phenomenal receiver. I want to say that he should be a Pro Bowler, in my opinion. He has beyond done a good job for this team. So that pick paid off dividends for him, and actually finally was a hit for a wide receiver for this team. I know it's something I'm going to keep a very much a tight eye on, of making sure that they hit very well with their wide receivers, because obviously it's a critical position. Trenton Simpson's was another guy that they ended up getting from the Ravens in the 3rd round pick for them. I thought he was a really good receiver, linebacker, very, very versatile guy. I was pretty high on him for this draft. So they did a good job there all around. So Kai Blue Kelly is another guy too that had a little bit of field time all around. But basically what I'm doing here, guys, is I'm just emphasizing, I think we're going to have a pretty good draft, and we're going to be able to find a lot of players that are Pro Bowl based players in this draft. Not just in the 1st round, by the way. We're going to draft for all the rounds to be able to get players that are going to be great role players that are going to contribute now. How many times did we see where it was Tom Telesco almost pretty much exactly saying, well, this guy has a good future, or he would like to be able to be down the road, or he's got a year to develop, or 2, or whatnot. No, you draft for the guys now. And I really feel very strongly that Joe Hortiz is going to pick the right guys with Jim Harbaugh, find the physical base players. And we need to get very physical all around with this team. We need to be a guy and team, or excuse me, we need a team that's really going to get after the competition and really bully people. If you watch the Lions, they bully people. Ravens defense generally bullies people. Same thing with their offense. They bully people. You want to be able to see that, and you're going to see that with Jim Harbaugh and Joe Hortiz. I guarantee we're going to see that, and we're going to get finally some depth, late round picks that we actually hit on, guys. I am looking so much forward to that, guys. So anyways, guys, just wanted to be able to just kind of point out the last 10 years with Joe Hortiz being with the Ravens, kind of what they drafted. Obviously, he was kind of more a part of the player scouting side of things, but his input creates these picks and makes these picks happen. So once again, guys, really appreciate your support. Want to be able to hear your guys' thoughts? Put your comments below. Once again, always appreciate the support. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. And once again, my name's James. I'm from Bolt Bros. Let's go.